as the panel is coming up to the stage, one of the questions we're probably going to ask them is, what about the topic of cybersecurity? We just got back from doing a lunch session on cybersecurity, and one of the things that are coming up is everybody's talking about as things become more and more connected, what are some of the steps that companies are using to take it, to leverage all their the cybersecurity technology that's available. So what I'm going to do is, while the panel's thinking about that question, let me start with letting all the panelists introduce themselves. So Warren. Oh, no mic. Okay. Do you have the wireless? We have to pass that around because we don't have a mic on the stage yet.
Use the handheld.
Many of the microphones work.
This is just stupid. Makes for good video.
Well, let's say anybody have a loud voice. How about Fred? Just let the panelists introduce themselves. Just whoever has a microphone that works.
All right, so I guess the microphones aren't working, so I'll just talk really loud. Can everybody hear me back there? Yeah.
We have to have it on video.
Okay, very good. All right. Hi, I'm Mark Creasy. I'm Director of Product Management at Mentor Graphics. Many of you identify Mentor Graphics as an electronic design automation firm that sells software tools for chip design, board layout, that sort of stuff. I work in a division inside Mentor Graphics called the Embedded Systems Division, and we provide embedded operating systems, middleware tools, and other things for embedded applications. And Schneider, as Andy said, is one of our very cherished customers.
Okay, Travis.
Yeah, I'm Travis Cox. I serve as the Director of Sales Engineering for Inductive Automation. Inductive Automation has a software platform called Ignition, which is HMI SCADA and MES software that Hugh has been using here. And so I actually trained thousands of people on Ignition software. I'm an expert on that. So, yeah.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Fred Jens. I'm the CEO of Telit IoT Platforms. Telit is a company that lives and breathes IoT every day. We really cover the whole value chain from people instrument electronics and basically creating modules, cellular, wireless, GPS modules for people to actually connect products. We offer IoT services in both network, data plan, and worldwide coverage models, as well as IoT from factory software and IoT services over the cloud. And that's our device-wise portfolio that Jeff kindly talked about.
Okay. So we wanted to start out and start bringing up the cybersecurity question. If you want to start, Jeff, how does the word cybersecurity, what does it mean in your plant, and what types of steps and actions are you taking regarding cybersecurity, especially as it relates to convergence?
Well, so Plant 4 industrial security is kind of a hot button with me. So we spent the last several years designing a security system for our control systems. And we have a pretty sophisticated system that starts at the PLC level up. And it manages supplier access to our equipment. It manages our own people's access to our equipment. Everything is logged, audited. Deep packet inspection of industrial protocols to understand what's going across the wire and if it's allowed or not allowed. And that's really driven all the way up to the points where our, much like it was mentioned, from an operations technology perspective, I don't trust the enterprise network, and conveniently they don't trust ours. So isolating the two through security appliances is something we do globally. So the only way in is with certificate-based SSL VPN connections in and out of the two networks. So it's proven to work very well.
Okay. Last the same for Hugh.
We've recently embarked on a whole new project over the last 5-6 months. I was on a call this morning, and we had 8,200 potential hits in the last 3 weeks at Chilani alone. People trying to break our process network or get into our IT, OT environment. We were in contact with the Department of Homeland Security, and they have a whole division set up with industrial control systems. And we're integrally driving through a whole project from multi-factor authentication, air gap is one thing, but I mean, we're driving through all the different elements. It's a huge topic for us, and it should be very
Okay, Andrew?
So cybersecurity is one of my specialties, and I have to say that it's a rapidly evolving world. You know, when we think about the process control systems that we all work with, these are some of the most complex systems on the planet. And then within those systems, cybersecurity is one of the most complex functions within these process control systems. And so it's a challenge to understand where all these threat actors are coming from in the world, to understand all the threat vectors that these systems have, and then to build cyber defenses into these. And I could say that you know, it's a never-ending challenge that we have.
Okay, now from the supplier's perspective, I mean, as panelists, these companies are all using your solutions. What are you doing as far as providing the cybersecurity solutions to your customers? I'll start with Fred.
Sure. So security in our vernacular is a defense in depth problem. You know, there's not one good answer. When we think about the device-wise application, et cetera, we really also focus on the different organizations, the different users, and the different roles. So a lot of what we do is some simple blocking and tackling around complex policy management and user management. So making sure that the IT guys don't get in and play in the OT sandbox and vice versa unless they're given exact and specific priority. There's also the whole issue of accidental or internal threats. So having a mature system that gives you, reporting, auditing, those kinds of alarms and events when things seem to not be going right is also important. And then at the boundary, of course, you've got packet inspection, firewalling, air gap. There's all kinds of other methods, but we look at the problem from the inside out as well.
Okay, and Travis?
Yeah, I'll just extend that. I mean, certainly, it's not only external threats you have to worry about; it's internal threats as well. With the amount of data that's being collected and being given to the enterprise. The amount of systems that are being connected together, the amount of people that are using the interfaces, whether it be on the plant floor, or whether it be on their mobile device, or whether it be at home through a VPN connection. You've got lots of data, lots of people in different areas, so you got to really, as far as security, you got to look at all of that. Dual phase, two-phase authentication are things that are really important. Being able to lock down and encrypt channels between things are all really important. That's what we have to really be conscious about and look into.
Okay, Warren.
Yeah, thanks, Ray. Yeah, as many of the other speakers said, securing the pipes, putting up firewalls, making sure you have good authentication in place is absolutely critical. And as a supplier of embedded solutions to our customers, we make sure we're supporting all those things. It was interesting listening to the speakers, the plenary session yesterday, where ExxonMobil is, what they're trying to do. They're talking about, you got to start thinking about it differently. You can't secure things through rings of security. You got to get away from the rip and replace strategy of doing things if you want to get to really efficient implementations in the future that lower operational costs. In the cybersecurity sessions yesterday, there was a comment about if everyone just keeps thinking about cybersecurity in terms of layering on software, that we're going to spend 90% of our energy making sure our security is up and running and 10% of the energy just actually processing something. So one of the approaches that we're doing at Mentor Graphics is, we're looking at ways that we can create security as part of the overall implementation of any sort of device. One of the things that we've embraced for a couple years now, we have a lot of customers picking up and leveraging it, is the use of a hardware-enforced security mechanism called Trust Zone. That's part of the ARM architecture. Do people know what ARM Trust Zone is? People generally? People have phones, right? And you probably have you have a passcode on it. So when you go and swipe and unlock, you enter in your passcode. So that passcode is stored within ARM Trust Zone. It's that whole comparison is all stored in a completely secured enclave, protected by the hardware security provided by ARM Trust Zone. ARM is a processor architecture, basically. Intel is an architecture, ARM is an architecture. So do any of you stream Netflix or Amazon on your iPads? Yeah. So movie studios have placed billion-dollar bets on doing the digital rights management inside ARM Trust Zone. So if you stream on one of these or on an iPad, all the DRM is being done inside ARM Trust Zone. So Our trust zone has been proven for years in the consumer markets, and now what we're seeing by talking to our customers and adoption of our technologies is that that high level of hardware enforced security has a very strong play in non-consumer implementations like industrial controls, industrial systems. So, I don't know if any of you were able to go into the demo room, but we were showing a box that was booting up from a hardware high assurance boot, and then it was booting into a trust zone environment running our Nucleus RTOS, which Andy uses. And from there, we were validating a Linux binary that would then be running outside of the trust zone environment. So if you go back to the phone, you might have a web browser running, you might have an online banking app running, right? The online banking stuff is all happening in a trusted environment. All the web stuff is happening outside. So the two are completely separated. And so what we're able to do is then enable a very secure environment that when you power it on, it just runs securely. So getting back to the question, Craig, sorry for the long story, is that as you start thinking about security differently, if you build this sort of hardware enforced security within your infrastructure, when you power on the infrastructure, you don't have to worry if somebody infiltrates a sensor. If you have a big distributed processing plant, somebody gets into a wireless sensor, they can get into the network. But the secure processing is completely invisible from whatever they do. If somebody comes in through a spear phishing attack, through an email at your enterprise, and they get into the network, again, that secure stuff processing inside a hardware enforced security partition is completely invisible from that. So that's one way that you can start thinking a little bit differently about security, other than beyond secured pipes, firewalls, and authentication.
Okay. Another big question that we have in IT and OT convergence is the culture wars. The dealing with IT departments and maybe a lack of knowledge or mistrust sometimes of OT and vice versa. So first I'll start off with the manufacturers. Did you have to experience any of these types of culture wars within your plants, and what type of steps did you take to try to solve them or help things out? We'll start with Jeff.
Sure. So, initially, this has been some years, so we put Ethernet on the plant floor. We went cold turkey Ethernet IP in about 2006. So, initially, IT wanted to manage the addressing. They wanted to use layer 3 switching. They wanted me to. So that went on for a little while, and yeah, there was a lot of headbutting. And then we had a conversation one day with our CIO, our vice president, and I basically said, well, if IT is in charge of networks, that means when the interbus goes down in Plant 6, we're putting in a ticket. When Profibus goes down, we're putting in a ticket. When ControlNet goes down, we're putting in a ticket, and I would expect that the IT team would respond because that's a network. Well, no, they wouldn't do that because they don't know anything about those networks. So then we had the long conversation about, just because this is Ethernet doesn't mean it's your Ethernet and you understand this kind of Ethernet. Nor do we need to be doing things like using 10-dot routable addressing on plant floor devices. So that kind of started a dialogue. So over the few years since then, we've gotten to the point now where when I left American Axle, most of the IT guys were sad to see me go because when I left, we had a great relationship and they actually counted on me to handle all of the plant floor network level security stuff for all the control systems. And they know I did that, cognizant of what their needs were at the enterprise level, so that anytime the two touched, we had I worked it out on both sides, so it worked out real well.
Okay.
When I'm going to mention this in my presentation, when I first joined Giovanni, it was a bit of a mess. They didn't really know what a Rockwell PLC was. They were troubleshooting the PLCs and everything. My first plan was to segregate it, so that's exactly what we did. We broke it into two separate environments, and I've seen a couple of different CIOs come and go, and there's always going to be the argument, and we're currently going through the discussion of they want to be the governing body of the networks, both IT and OT, for those, but they can't push down IP policies or server patches and upgrades to our servers in the process network or industrial control system. It'll crash the system. I mean, I only had an email yesterday warning them they wanted someone to come in just to look at our infrastructure, and I said, I have no problem opening it up, but if you touch a single solitary thing, you're likely going to shut our production down. So, and again, no disrespect to any IT people that might be in the room. I mean, we can work together, and we will work together, and it's the only way to do it going forward. There has to be seamless communication and collaboration between the two different entities. But I still feel strongly that to keep them separate.
Okay. Andy.
So, you know, my experience in this is not all that different than what you guys are experiencing. Where in our own R&D facility, we've developed our own private IT department. And for a decade, we've run our own private IT department that understands our mission and not necessarily the whole business mission. And it's been over the past couple of years that we're starting to take that down now. We're starting to do the proper air gapping and firewalling between the dev organization and the rest of the business, and we're starting to finally find our way where we can have proper connections and interfaces to IT.
Okay. Now, from the supplier's perspective, you know, it's a culture because it depends who you're selling to. Are you selling on the operations side of the business? Are you selling to the IT side of the business? So I'm curious the perspective of the suppliers, and we'll start with Fred.
So we sell to enterprises. They actually usually have both,
Okay.
IT and OT guys. And no enterprise is really the same. It's cultural, it's relationships, it's the rules of the road at that company per se. So what we've really found, and I think it's most effective, is we need to make sure that we're giving these teams really easy to use tools with a lot of flexibility in terms of, for example, where you deploy. Is it private? Is it a hybrid environment? Is it a public cloud? Some people just have rules. IT guys have a different degree of freedom in certain enterprises than others. OT guys have different desires. Giving different people access rights, as I said in the previous answer, around policy and policy management, right down to maybe which tags on a PLC you might let someone from IT read, but not letting them write. So having extreme fidelity on how you can configure the systems. Because some people have unfettered rights, some people have very controlled rights, and it just depends on the company and the relationships that they may have inside. So I think it's about a tool that's simple to use so you can focus on implementing it in your business with the rules that you abide by in your culture and in your business. And focus on a champion that can get them together in one room. You know, nothing in this IT-OT convergence works unless there's some kind of corporate champion. When that happens, give them the tools that they can cut up the pie however they need to and give anybody who needs to the right authorities, and then let them get to work. That's really what we find.
Okay, great. Travis?
I think it's, from our perspective, I think it's incredibly important to, you know, IT and OT, obviously IT not understanding a lot of the operational stuff and the PLCs. I mean, there's definitely a need for the different networks there, but it's also incredibly important for them to understand what these operations are, what's going on, and to try to give them stuff that they can actually support, something they understand. So from our perspective, we put data into databases that they can support and they can work with, and they can be interoperable with other systems. You know, middleware software, as far as taking data from the plant floor and kind of delivering that data up to the enterprise level, makes it easier for them to understand and to maintain. And so, you know, software that is server-based and doesn't have any installation on client sides is also, they don't have to worry about the HMIs that are on the plant floor. But they get to worry about the firewalls and the access control lists and the things that they understand. So I think it's really important to sort of to really work together to where the things that they need to understand and they need to help with support on the OT level.
That's exactly what we're doing.
Is I think that's really important.
Okay. And Laura?
Yeah, similar sort of answer. You know, for us, since we sell embedded software and tools to tier 1 providers of equipment, you know, we just have to make sure that, well, we do get exposed to the IT, OT kind of divides in some cases. But for us, the way it translates into making sure that we provide the right technical bases, that allow this equipment to be tied into the IT and supported by the OT infrastructure. So, supporting things like OPC UA and EtherCAT and those sorts of things are. We have to make sure that we're supporting those in our products so that the equipment can be enabled to operate within the broader network.
Okay, great. If we have any questions for the audience?
So in IT, we see sort of a growth where they're kind of going down this maturity curve towards service-driven management, service levels, ITSM, ITIL, et cetera, right? So they're going down this path of virtualization, cloud, et cetera. And I was just curious, if we ignored IT for a little bit, and we looked just at OT, what sort of trends and transformations are occurring on the OT side of the house that an IT professional would need to be aware of? Does that question make sense?
Yeah, for us, it's very similar. We have the same VM farms that we're actually developing on the process side. We've got fully RAID 5 redundant servers. We've got multiple sets of clusters of VM farms on the process side. The IT department now want to take them over and manage them. It brings in the issue of they want to roll down software updates and software patches. So we're in the process of going through literally this week and next, going through different policies and more of a houses. What's the workflow going to look like in terms of the processes and policies that IT want to drive from a cybersecurity perspective down into the industrial control system. So again, when we're buying, when Giovanni's going out to buy a piece of hardware from an IT, whether it's servers or anything, I want to leverage the power that the IT department have from the relationships we have with Dell and everybody else. So it's not just a separate entity and say, well, that's your problem, that's your budget and your project. We need to be working together. So yeah, but in terms of infrastructure and everything else, it's a similar platform from our perspective because the software platforms that are coming from Rockwell, inductive automation, and others need to go on to similar hardware mainframes.
Okay, anybody else, or should we take the next question? Okay.
Going back to kind of the OT-IT, I come from an IT many, many years, and while I don't take offense, because I do feel kind of this Don Quixote thing, when I run into things like the Nest you had there, and I run into things like that I see that just send chills down my back. How do you approach them and say, while you want to do IT, how do you bite your tongue and not say, but you're not doing it right?
We literally I came in and said, and the owner of the company came to me and said, well, what can I do? I need to keep the plant running. And I says, if I got full control, I said, yeah, and I completely segregated the network. And IT really didn't have a say at that stage. Now we have fully segregated networks at both Twin Falls, New York, and our Melbourne, Australia facility. And they're separate. But we still need to, it sent chills down my back the day I walked in there, especially when everything started going off and I put my hand into the bird's nest and everything shut down. But today, not a problem. It needs to be clean. I mean, the day of just pulling cables and just landing a cable in the front of the switch is gone. I mean, you have to plan your work your plan, lay everything out, make sure that IT in agreement. What did IT do after we did that? They took every single switch cabinet they had in the plant and they put one right next to ours in the exact same format and layout with the same patch panels, everything. And they put their own panels in and cleaned everything up over the course of 6 months to a year.
Anybody else?
Yeah, excuse me. I was going to say that, one of the drivers is you have to find the commonality between IT and OT. In my presentation there, I was talking about you have different views of the business, but in the end, you still have a common goal. You're still trying to run the business, and then you start to break that down. And if we have to run the business, well, what's important about running the business? Well, reliability is, efficiency is, optimizing your materials into the operation side of it. Well, IT can help with that. They got the financials that can help with that. So it's finding these common goals, and then as a result of finding these common goals, you then can start to uncover the bird's nests.
There's a big difference for us though. we're such a young company, but yet we're a big company. But we started small. It's not, we're not like PepsiCo who have a huge structure already developed. They've got their policies, procedures, standards that are built in, and really the OT is the small fish in a big pond when it comes to that whole environment and network. I've known Jeff there in the crowd for a long time, and I sat watching him discussing probably 5 years ago at a conference, discussing how IT and OT should work closely together.
Yeah, they've been talking about it for a while, but now I think we're starting to see the fruits of the labor. Do you have anything to add? Or?
Yeah, so when I look at and the approach we took is, for us, Ethernet, we went cold turkey Ethernet IP in 2006. For us, Ethernet on plant floor is a field bus first. It's everything else second. So base functionality that exists in reading and writing and driving my process is number one. If it can't do that, I can't use it. All of the extensibility or all the gravy, if you will, that comes along with the fact that it's based on 802 or standards is great, but at the end of the day, it's an Ethernet field bus. And so some of the differences are if you apply some of the, and we applied some of the rules to the traditional field buses, you will never see a patch panel in my site. You will never see a rat's nest, but you will never see a patch panel. In traditional controls thinking, the fewer the connections you have on a network, the better and more reliable the network. So we use a lot of rings, so it's in and out of the switch, rings, and so we don't have a lot of star topologies to drive back to patch panels. So fundamentally, your typical IT teams don't understand rings, right? They don't really get the ring architecture, the topology, how it goes together, how you isolate. And we do leverage the enterprise network at a point. So instead of creating a singular, and this is kind of in contrast, instead of creating a singular plant infrastructure or plant network, we touch with a 22-bit maximum subnet, we touch points in the enterprise network where data needs to transition between that assembly system and controls, and then we cap that bottle, right? It's easier to keep things out than it is doing anything else. So from that perspective, it's a little bit different approach. We started the plant floor up, and then we integrated the IT systems that way.
And just to add to that, I mean, when we put in the Hirschman switches, we put them in specifically for a reason that the average OT guy isn't a Cisco certified network person. It's an average, it's a maintenance person, it's an automation programmer that's there trying to maintain the plant and keep it running. We chose Hirschman because they have very simple user interfaces that give you 60 to 70% of the troubleshooting tools with one touch click getting into a web browser interface. After that, then we have senior automation people that are trained on those switches to get down. I mean, I don't disagree. I mean, a lot of the plants nowadays, they have their own closed loop systems. I mean, they're field bus networks, they're driving down that road, that path. But I think with big data, where it's going, the IIoT, that data is going to have to get onto the Ethernet network at some stage to be able to drive it up to the top level.
Yeah, we wholeheartedly agree with you at ARC. But I guess in the interest of time, I'd like to please give the speakers and panelists an applause because they did a fabulous job today. We'll be back at 4 p.m., so enjoy the quick break, and we'll see you at 4. Thank you very much.